Paul McCartney laughed and said, "Prince, you're a genius, but you can't sing Beatles songs. That's our sound, mate. You'd never—" He didn't finish that sentence, because Prince walked to the piano, sat down, and what he played next made Paul cry for the first time in 30 years. Private Estate, Malibu, California. Late evening, December 2014, 10:47 p.m. Post-Grammy celebration. Intimate gathering. 40 people. After the Grammy Awards, Paul McCartney was hosting a private after-party at a rented Malibu estate. Invite only, no press, no cameras, just musicians, close friends, industry legends. Paul McCartney, 72, Ringo Starr, 74, Questlove, Pharrell Williams, Prince, 56, invited by Questlove, a handful of session musicians and producers. The vibe, relaxed, nostalgic. Everyone drinking wine, except Prince, who sipped water, telling stories, laughing. 10:52 p.m. Paul was at the grand piano. Steinway in the living room. He was playing Beatles songs for fun. Casual. Not performing, just playing. Let It Be. Hey Jude. Everyone singing along. The long and winding road. The room was swaying. Singing. Some people crying. Nostalgia is powerful. Prince was sitting in the corner. Black suit, purple pocket square, sipping water, listening quietly. He hadn't said much all night, just observing. 11:17 p.m. Paul finished, "Yesterday." The room applauded. Someone yelled, "Play another one." Paul laughed. "I've been playing Beatles songs for 50 years. Someone else should have a go." He looked around the room, landed on Prince. "Prince, you play piano. Come up here." Prince, shaking his head. "I'm good." "Come on. You play 27 instruments. Surely you can handle one Beatles song." The room laughed, encouraged Prince. Questlove, grinning. "Prince, you gotta do it. Paul McCartney is asking you to play Beatles." Prince stood, reluctantly, walked to the piano. Paul stepped aside, gesturing grandly. "All yours, mate." Prince sat, looked at the keys, then at Paul. "Any requests?" Paul, playful. "While my guitar gently weeps, but you can't use a guitar. Piano only." The room laughed. It was a challenge, a friendly one. Prince nodded. "Okay, but I'm changing the arrangement." Paul raised an eyebrow. "Changing it? That's George's song. You can't just—" "I can, and I will." Paul grinned. This was going to be fun. Prince placed his hands on the keys, didn't warm up, didn't test the sound, just started. The opening melody, recognizable, George Harrison's composition. But it wasn't the Beatles version. It wasn't George Harrison's guitar-driven arrangement. It was completely reimagined. First 30 seconds. The melody was there, but the chords were different. Jazz chords. Complex voicings that sounded like Bill Evans meets Stevie Wonder. 30 to 60 seconds. Prince started singing. His voice, falsetto, delicate, vulnerable, sounded nothing like the Beatles, but it sounded perfect. He sang the opening verse, the words George wrote. But the delivery was different, more intimate, more wounded. The room went quiet. 60 to 90 seconds. Prince shifted. The arrangement became gospel, church piano, the kind of chords you hear in Black Baptist churches, the kind George Harrison never played because he wasn't raised in that tradition, but Prince was. His father had played piano in a Seventh-day Adventist church. Prince grew up hearing these chords. He was translating George Harrison's British rock ballad into Black American gospel. 90 seconds in, Paul McCartney, sitting 3 feet away, had his hand over his mouth. His eyes were wet, not crying yet, but close. Pharrell, standing against the wall, had stopped moving entirely, just watching Prince's hands. 2 minutes in, Prince added a bridge that wasn't in the original, a moment of pure improvisation. his fingers dancing across the keys like he was channeling something beyond the song itself. The melody George wrote, the chords Prince heard. In his father's church, the space between rock and gospel collapsing into one sound. It wasn't fusion, it wasn't crossover, it was recognition. Prince was showing everyone in the room that George Harrison's spiritual search and the Black Church's spiritual foundation were the same search, just sung in different languages. Ringo Starr, sitting across the room, had tears running down his face. His hands gripped the armrests of his chair. He'd played this song thousands of times with George, heard it in stadiums, in studios, in his head for 40 years, but he'd never heard this. 3 minutes in, Prince brought it back. The familiar melody, but now it sounded like a hymn, like something you'd hear at a funeral for someone you loved deeply, which, in a way, it was. George Harrison had died in 2001, 13 years ago. Paul and Ringo had been living with that absence for over a decade, and here was Prince, someone George had never met, playing George's song like he understood, something about George that even Paul and Ringo had forgotten. 4 minutes in, Prince finished. The final chord hung in the air, a major seventh with an added ninth. Gospel, church, resolution. He let it fade completely, didn't rush it. Let the sound die naturally, then silence. Nobody moved, nobody applauded. The 40 people in that room were frozen. Some had their hands over their mouths, some had tears on their faces, some were just staring at Prince like they'd witnessed something they didn't have words for. Paul McCartney was crying, openly, his face in his hands, his shoulders shaking. Ringo was crying, not hiding it. Not ashamed, just letting it happen. Questlove had his phone in his pocket, hadn't even thought to record it. Later he'd say, "Some moments you don't capture, you just live them." Pharrell was standing against the wall, motionless. His face said everything. Shock, awe, recognition that he'd just witnessed mastery at a level most people never see. Prince sat, at the piano, hands still on the keys, head slightly bowed. Waiting, not for applause, just waiting for the moment to settle, for the room to breathe again. 30 seconds passed. Nobody spoke. Finally, Paul stood, walked to the piano. His face was wet. He wasn't trying to hide it. He put his hand on Prince's shoulder. "That's George's song, but that's not how George played it." Prince looked up at him. Paul's voice broke. "That's how George would have wanted it played." Prince stood. The two men embraced. Paul whispered something in his ear. Nobody else heard it. Later, when asked what he said, Paul would only say, "That's between me and Prince." The party continued, but quieter now, more reverent. At midnight, Paul and Prince sat on the back terrace. Just the two of them. The Pacific Ocean stretching out in front of them. Stars overhead, the sound of waves in the distance. Paul lit a cigarette. Something he rarely did anymore. His hands were shaking slightly. "Paul, how did you know to do that? The gospel chords, the church arrangement." Prince, "Because that's where George was searching. He went to India, found spirituality in sitars and meditation, but the spiritual music I grew up with, black church, gospel piano, it's asking the same questions, just in a different language." Paul took a drag. Exhaled slowly. "George would have loved that, I know." "How do you know? You never met him." Prince looked out at the ocean. "I know because I listened to his songs. Really listened. Not to the guitar parts or the production, to what he was trying to say underneath. Every song is a prayer when you strip it down far enough." Paul nodded slowly, wiped his eyes with the back of his hand. "George and I, we had our differences. You know that. Everyone knows that. But we loved each other. Brothers fight. That's what brothers do. And when he died, I realized I'd never told him enough, never thanked him enough for the songs he wrote, for the beauty he brought into the world." His voice cracked. "Tonight, when you played his song like that, I heard George, Not his guitar, not his voice, but his heart. The thing he was trying to say with that song. You found it, and you gave it back to me. Prince put his hand on Paul's shoulder, said nothing, just sat there. Sometimes silence is the only appropriate response to grief. They sat like that for 10 minutes. Two legends, watching the ocean, thinking about the people they'd lost. April 21st, 2016. Prince Rogers Nelson died at Paisley Park, 57 years old. Paul McCartney released a statement that night. I met Prince many times over the years, but I'll never forget December 2014. A private party in Malibu. I asked him to play a Beatles song, George's song, While My Guitar Gently Weeps. What he played wasn't a cover. It was a translation. He took George's British rock ballad and turned it into Black American gospel. He found the spirituality George was searching for and put it in a language George never spoke but would have understood completely. When he finished, I cried. For George, for the beauty of what Prince had just created, for the reminder that great songs transcend the people who write them. Prince showed me my best friend's song in a way I'd never heard before, and in doing so, he gave me George back for 4 minutes. That's what genius does. It doesn't replicate, it transforms. It finds the thing you didn't know was missing and hands it to you, like a gift. Rest in power, Prince. I hope you and George are making music together now. 2017. Paul McCartney was interviewed for a documentary about Prince. The interviewer asked, "What's the most memorable performance you ever witnessed?" Paul thought for a long time. Prince playing While My Guitar Gently Weeps at my house in 2014. 40 people in the room, no cameras, no recording. Just Prince at a piano reimagining my best friend's song as a gospel hymn. Why was that so memorable? Because he didn't just play the notes. He understood what the song was about. George wrote that song when he was searching for meaning, for peace, for something beyond the material world. Prince took that search and translated it into a different musical tradition, the Black Church, gospel piano, music that comes from the same spiritual hunger George felt, but expressed in a completely different way. When he finished, everyone in that room understood that music isn't about genres or styles or who wrote what. It's about the human need to connect with something larger than ourselves. Did you ever tell Prince what that performance meant to you? I did. That night, on the terrace. Just the two of us. What did you say? Paul smiled. That's between me and Prince. 2018. Questlove published a memoir. One chapter was titled The Night Prince Made Paul McCartney Cry. Excerpt, I brought Prince to Paul's party. I thought it would be cool. 2 legends in one room. I didn't expect what happened. Paul asked Prince to play Beatles. Prince said yes. Then he completely transformed While My Guitar Gently Weeps. Took a British rock song and made it sound like something you'd hear in a church in Minnesota. Jazz chords, gospel voicings, that Prince falsetto that could break your heart. When he finished, Paul was crying. Ringo was crying. I was crying. Later, I asked Prince why he changed the arrangement so drastically. He said, because the song was already perfect the way George wrote it. I couldn't improve on that, but I could show it from a different angle, give people who grew up in black churches a way to hear their own tradition in a Beatles song. That's what Prince did. He didn't compete with the Beatles. He expanded them, showed that their songs could live in any tradition, speak any musical language, as long as you understood what they were really about. That night in Malibu, he proved that the best tribute to someone's art isn't replication, it's transformation. 2020, Ringo Starr was asked about his favorite musical memories. There are so many. The Ed Sullivan Show, Shea Stadium, Abbey Road. But one of the most powerful was watching Prince play George's song in 2014. Just a small party. Nothing official. Prince sat at a piano and played While My Guitar Gently Weeps. like I'd never heard it before. He made it gospel, church music. And suddenly I understood something about George I'd never understood before. George was always searching. India, meditation, spirituality, and Prince showed us that George's search was the same search that built black gospel music. Different paths, same destination. When it was over, Paul and I just looked at each other. We didn't need to say anything. We both knew we'd just witnessed something that would never happen again. Some performances are too sacred to record. That was one of them. The 40 people in that room in Malibu carry that memory. No recording exists, no video, no audio. Just 40 witnesses to the moment when Prince took George Harrison's search for transcendence and translated it into a language George never spoke but always understood. When people ask what happened that night, they all say the same thing. You had to be there, and you did. Because some music is meant to stay in the room where it was born. Sacred, unrepeatable, perfect. In the years after Prince died, musicians who were in that room would occasionally reference that night, never in detail, never explaining exactly what happened, just acknowledging that something profound had occurred. A journalist once asked Pharrell, "What's the greatest live performance you've ever seen?" Pharrell didn't hesitate. "Prince playing While My Guitar Gently Weeps for Paul McCartney in 2014, but I can't tell you about it. You had to be there. Why can't you tell me? Because describing it would diminish it. Some performances exist in a space beyond words." That was one of them. In 2021, a Beatles documentary aired. Paul was interviewed extensively about George. At one point, the interviewer asked, "When do you feel closest to George now?" Paul thought for a long time. "When I hear his songs played in ways he never imagined. When someone takes While My Guitar Gently Weeps and makes it their own. That's when I feel George is still here, still creating, still inspiring." He didn't mention Prince by name. Didn't need to. Everyone who was in that room knew exactly what he was talking about.